for an incredible night. Oh, we're taking it up a notch.
If consistency is anything that you're interested in for such a long period of time and stay at the top of your game, Mr. Jonny Draper.
Every wedding I am at, there is a business opportunity within that wedding. I'm not going around giving business cards out to everybody that's there. But if you put yourself across in the right way, it just gets noticed. That's where you pick up the multiple bookings from. The work, photographs, the end product is almost a given. How do I fit into this wedding as quickly as possible on the day? How do I make everybody else relax? And again, you're being helpful, you're giving them stuff that they need, and you're keeping your name at the front of their minds.
Hey, be sure you stick around because we're only getting warmed up.
I want to know how you get presents out of every single table.
Guilty.
Of course he does.
Yeah. How are we doing, guys? And welcome to another episode of Think Wedding Business. Now, today we are interviewing one of my best mates. I know Azai's going to be doing this in the background. Ever since I started in the wedding industry, this guy has been with me every single step of the way. And if consistency is anything that you're interested in or trying to find out how to get that consistency for such a long period of time and stay at the top of your game in your chosen industry, this man has got some amazing things to teach us today. So without further ado, I want to welcome Mr. Jonny Draper. How are we doing, mate?
Very well, thank you
Hi,
for having
Johnny.
me. Great to be here. Very excited for our chat.
It's going to be hard, isn't it? Because me and John have been mates, like I said, right from the start of my career. We try and hone in on each person's individual's kind of superpower, if you like, marketing superpower within their industry. And certainly Johnny's is always keeping that consistency right from the very beginning of his career to where he is now. Always completely booked out, always seems to have the best relationship with his clients, always has great relationships with the venues. And I'm going to say he's probably the most... He gets the most presents from his brides and grooms than any other supplier that I've ever known.
If we ask you anything today, don't let me forget to ask you how you get gifts out of couples.
I'm talking
so often.
Crates of Jaeger, he just gets everything.
We say all this. Are you busy? Still busy this year? You've been had a crazy year. And
Yeah, it's good. Really great year so far. Still loads of great weddings to shoot. I don't want to hark back to the whole COVID thing. We've all done that to death now, but since everything went back to normal and all that, it has been bonkers. It's been busier than it ever was. In part because I was sort of keen to kind of say yes to a bit more than perhaps I used to pre-COVID. I think that gave us all a bit of a scare about, oh God, we're not going to have a business anymore. So I have said,
bring it all back in.
Yeah, and my diary's been kind to me last year and this year and next year. The level of inquiries that I've got, I've actually had the space in my diary to accommodate without them all falling into 3, 4, 5 weddings on the bounce. They've been really nicely spread out. So I've been shooting consistently from January right through to the end of the year. Last year, this year, and next year's the same. So it's allowed me to kind of go, do you know what? I will do a few more weddings because these are great venues. They're really nice clients. And I'm not killing myself. I'm doing more numbers than I used to, but I can actually accommodate it. So
when you're not doing them all at once in the summer, 3 on a bounce in the week, you can take it more spread out, can't you?
Yeah,
I've
definitely.
been the opposite of that. I've took less after COVID.
I thought you'd retired.
Who is Howard Wing? He disappeared a few years ago. I never heard of it.
I think it made me realise that, I think last year was so crazy for all of us in the industry. I think I did the most weddings I've ever done in a year ever last year. And it was just a bit, I just found it a bit too much. And I always want to make sure that I'm giving that as much as I can to my couples. And it diluted me a little bit too much, I think. So that's why I've kept things a little bit smaller. But loads to talk with Jonny about today. He's brilliant at targeting venues. We all, great at the relationship side of things. And we've got plenty to ask you on the marketing front, but I think we should take it back to the beginning.
Yeah, sure.
Where did you get started? How did you get started? And what led you into the world of weddings? And why is that something you settled in that you really love and enjoy to do?
I will try and keep this relatively brief because it's one of those, it's a long story.
Yeah.
I had a proper job back in the day. I worked for an ad agency, a creative ad agency in Manchester. I worked in the TV department, filming and editing stuff, non-broadcast stuff, usually things for corporate videos, bits of online content for clients. And cutting the very long story short, somebody at work was getting married and went, oh, you video and film stuff and edit stuff. Will you come and film our wedding?
Oh,
Yeah,
so this
sure.
is film.
Yeah. So I just kind of naively said, yeah, how hard can it be? So I turned up at this wedding a few months later, using all the kit that I had at my disposal at work. Certainly didn't buy any of my own stuff. Turned up at this wedding and kind of just shot what I saw. I'd never even been to a wedding before, so I didn't really understand the component parts of the day and what was important and what wasn't. Yeah. I was treating it like all the stuff that I would shoot at work, and certainly when I then edited this first wedding, editing it in a way that was exciting, kept people's attention, wasn't long, and kind of delivered this 2.5 minute, what you would call these days highlight reel, set to a piece of music on a DVD, which I didn't even realise at the time was not the norm. People were still getting 8-hour epics on VHS from videographers. So I give this DVD and people go, bride and groom loved it. They showed loads of people. All these people came back to them who were getting married and went, where's this guy from? And he charges £100, that's all. and all of a sudden, again, cutting the long story short, my weekend diary started filling up. I continued to go out with works kit. Fortunately, the building we were in Manchester had 24-hour access. We had little swipey cards so we could get into our office. So I would then, the weekends I didn't do weddings, I was staying late, or I was sneaking in at a weekend and doing the edit at the weekend. Oh, wow. And that was kind of how that happened.
This is all videography at this point.
This was video, yeah. And I then met a husband and wife photography team who were I'd probably been doing this about 18 months by this point, still working. This is all alongside my job. And I met this couple who were probably the first photographers who weren't what I would describe as old school at the time. I was very much used to working with photographers who shot the ceremony, did a few photographs, family pictures outside church, came to the venue, did the mock cutting of the cake, and that was it. And they were getting an album with 24 or 36 prints in. I was doing all day. I was doing prep through until first dance because it just felt like that's what the right approach was to deliver. Kind of, I didn't realise at the time, but I was trying to deliver a story of the day. Then met this couple who were totally different to anybody I'd worked with before, and they were very early adopters of digital as well. So they'd spent a fortune on digital cameras. So it was really exciting seeing the back of their cameras, what they'd been shooting on the day. And the first time I worked with them, we sat down during the wedding breakfast and doing the small talk thing as you do. I kind of said to them, so you're friends of the family then? You've known these guys for years? And they were just like, no, they're just regular clients. I was like, but everybody knows you and you're really friendly and you're getting on with everybody. And yeah, that's just what we do. We try and just be part of the day and make it easy for people. And it was light bulb moment, like, oh wow, you can be an important part of the day alongside what you're actually there for. And I really, really liked their approach. And almost immediately on that day, I was like, I want to have a go at the photography thing here because I think that would suit me better from a personality point of view as well. I liked the idea of being a little bit more involved in the day. And I worked with them quite quickly again. About 6 months later, it was two sisters' weddings, and we both happened to be randomly on them, and had a bit more of a chat with them on the second one. And then within a few months, I kind of just put it out there to people. I want to try photography at a wedding. I have got loads of experience, but just not with a stills camera. So anybody whose mates are getting married, don't have much of a budget, whatever.
Usual way to get your foot in the door then.
And did 6 or 7 weddings in a really short space of time. And it was people who were literally, we weren't going to have anybody because we've got no budget. Great, I'll come up and do it.
Portfolio stuff.
Yeah, and I put some stuff together enough to give me a decent-ish portfolio to start showing people. And then kind of had to think about, right, how do I show people? So I had to get it was really basic as well, first website, so you had a little bit of something to show people online. Had to buy a phone because I had a work phone, and I was getting people to call me on that, to connect, which I don't think the work were too happy about. So I ended up with, what I referred to as the bat phone. That was my own work phone. So if that rang, it was exciting. Some business is happening. And yeah, it sort of transitioned then into, right, I'm going to have a proper go at the stills. So I bought some more gear, and then transitioned away from my full-time job. I was really lucky in that I was able to drop a day a week. So I ended up having a Friday where I worked for myself. And I'd done a bit of back of fag packet maths and thought, if I can get to, I can't even remember what the number is at the time because I can't remember what I was charging, but it wasn't very much. But if I can get to X amount of weddings in my diary for the next 6 months, I know that replaces the income I've got from a full-time job. So I could sidestep into that, and then it's my own fault if it doesn't work. Then I've got 6 months of being paid to make sure I get another 6 months worth of work in. Anyway, I can't remember the time, but I was kind of thinking if I can work for myself on a Friday for maybe 2 years to build it up and then step away from it then. Anyway, within 3 months of having Fridays to myself, I was like, I've got enough in the diary. Because it was unbelievably amount of graft you could put in on one free, clear day compared to what was doing in and around my full-time job.
So you weren't necessarily shooting on the Friday, but you were working on your business.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean,
marketing and meeting people and
exactly, because all that time ago, which is bloody years ago, it was Saturdays were the wedding day. Even Fridays and Sundays were rare then. Most people got married on a Saturday. So the Friday was my right. How can I elevate my business and get myself out there?
So many takeaways from.
I was going to say, when you worked out that I need to replace my income from a job, and to do that I need this amount of weddings for this price, and you work it all out, and then that's when so that is probably the safe point to transition. But then once you become full time and you don't have your job, it's amazing how with all of that time, how quickly then you can progress. Because the amount of time that you gain to then work on it, it just goes times 10 all of a sudden, doesn't it? And
exactly, yeah.
And you've got so much pressure on yourself as well.
And you've got to make it
broken away. You've got to do it, and you've got all the time to do it, and you can.
But there's a real, like most people's, that's the big sticking point from going to part-time to full-time, is that fear of like, well, if it doesn't work, then what? I've left my job. But all that free time that you have to then put into it should be encouraging and like a confidence thing, because you've suddenly got Monday to Friday 10 hours a day, but you can just make it happen.
We've had this question quite a lot, haven't we, with some of our students, to say, when is a good time to actually quit your job? And this pretty
Probably
much exactly what Johnny's just said.
Replace your income.
Replace your income first, and then
what would you say?
Leap,
It depends on. I mean, everyone's got different circumstances, haven't they? It depends what your own personal tolerance level of worry and fear and all that sort of stuff, where that sits within you. But because I dipped my toe in quite a lot and really got to the point where I was like, this can be a business. I can be working for myself here. And I was able to do that little transition by having the Friday and got that taster of, it's Thursday, so I'm off tomorrow. In my head, I was off work. I wasn't working on my business. Yeah. But I'd wake up in the morning on the Friday and I'm like, right, what am I on with today? I'm doing a lot of what I was on with was getting straight in the car and going and trying to connect with people face to face. There was only so much, because I wasn't shooting loads of weddings, so there was only so much content I could share. There was no social media, that didn't exist.
So you weren't sat at your computer working on your website all Friday. You were going out and meeting people. Yeah,
because I think one of the things I suppose made a decision on that early on was there's two routes I thought I could take in terms of trying to get myself out there. There was the SEO route. How do I get myself on page one of Google? Do I pay for Google Ads? How do I do that? And I didn't know anything about that. It wasn't part of any of my job. It wasn't part of any, I suppose, interest that I had in anything. Or surely if I kind of make people know who I am, maybe that's a way of doing it. And I kind of decided to go down that route because I felt I already had enough in the locker to be able to attempt to do that. Whereas I was starting from zero if I decided to go down the SEO route, I'd have to learn a load of stuff to try and SEO is, it's a...
Who knows about SEO? Episode 6 with David.
Well, he's your man.
Yeah,
but I mean, he knows.
It's still relevant today, but it's a very different. Like, it's a full-on, full-time job, and it's a very different approach. And like David said on that podcast,
he doesn't want to do this stuff. Yeah,
he doesn't like going out and talking to people. He's more introverted, and that's his approach, and it works for him. So you identified that you're better at that. You're better at being around people and getting face to face with them, and that's what you did.
Yeah,
he's utilising what he's best at, and he's got a great personality, and he's a really big people person, and that's part of Jonny's ethos. That's part of why people book you, without a shadow of a doubt. I always tell my couples, choose 3 or 4 photographers you like the work of, and book the one you get on with the most, who you have the most laugh with, because they're with you all day, and Jonny capitalises on that.
I think your superpower, I'm going to blow smoke up your ass, and you might disagree,
Not
but
too far.
I think your superpower is that it could, and you do well with your social media to portray this, but your relationship with your couples and the suppliers and your network, like venue people and other suppliers that you always seem to be best, whether it's your couples or the suppliers, you just seem like best mates. And it goes back to what that photography couple that you met, that you assumed knew them because they were so personable.
Yeah.
And you've clearly took that on board, because that's ever since I've known you. It's like, Jonny always seems to actually know his couples, and I know now that it's probably not the case. You probably just met them once or twice and they're clients, but it always seems like you are best mates with them. And then when you're on the day, you're having a laugh with them, you're doing selfies. And I think from a couple's point of view that are looking for a photographer, they must see that on yours versus the other 5 photographers. They go, well, yeah, but Jonny seems like he's much nicer to get on with than them other people that don't show all that. Was that something that you consciously did then from the start, because you'd learnt it from that couple that you'd worked with? Is that something that you've always...
I think it just comes natural to Jonny.
Integrated? Or was it subconscious?
I think more subconscious initially, and then when you realise you're sort of going in the right direction with something, you then jump on it and go, I think this is working. So maybe that's the route I need to take. And you're absolutely right. I meet my couples a handful of times before their wedding, but it's not fake, if that makes sense. You can't pretend to really like people. I'm really, really lucky.
You can't keep it up. You can't.
No, you'd get found out, and then it kind of comes crumbling down around you. And I've been lucky. I've shot a lot of weddings for a lot of numbers of years, and as a result of that, based on exactly what you're saying, what I kind of put out there, the work first and foremost, because people have got to love what you do, but then everything else in and around it has to kind of back it up as to why you'd be the right person to be there on their wedding day. And as a result of all that, I've ended up working with pretty much the right client every single wedding for quite a few years now. So it isn't fake. When I'm there on the wedding day, I'm buzzing to be there. These people are super lovely people, great weddings, loads of great stuff going on, and it's exciting to be there. I'm not bouncing into bride's prep or in to see the boys in the morning and pretending that I'm excited to be there. I'm really looking forward to the day ahead and what we're going to do, how their day's going to unfold, how we're going to shoot that, document it for them, how we're going to shoot some great stuff for the 2 of them, give them something that goes up on the wall and that they love, but ultimately kind of leave. And I think it's really important, and something that I always remember, that every wedding I am at, there is a business opportunity within that wedding, without being cold and hard sell about it. I'm not going around giving business cards out to everybody that's there. I don't mean it like that. What I mean is...
Don't do that.
If you... Yeah, don't do that. But if you put yourself across in the right way, it just gets noticed, and it gets noticed subconsciously by other people at that point. But if it's their turn to get married next, and you've done the right thing at that wedding, you've produced, what you said you're going to produce, some great photographs for them, but you've been the right person on the right day, that's where you pick up the multiple bookings from. And that's why I'm really lucky, and I see a lot of my couples again and again at other weddings, their friends, their families' weddings. And that for me is a huge part of my business, making sure that I am in those circles of people, because
It's got to be right for you as well as them, hasn't it?
Yeah, and you know that this is the right crowd for me. It's the same when you do a gig. You know, you're going to walk in and the roof's going to go off because they're the right people to have you at their wedding.
Yeah. It's like you said, if I can't turn up at a wedding, if maybe I don't like the couple as much, I can't fake it. Do you know what I mean? It's impossible to do that. You know, I've really got to have a good connection with my couples. Because I'm not right for everybody, but if I know that I'm right for them and they're right for me, they get a chance to book, and you know it's going to be so good on the day. And it does happen kind of naturally. You might get the odd one kind of slip through, but because people are like people, aren't they? You know, and you find a similar crowd on that one and on that one, it's the same, and you're going to turn up and you're excited to do it. But that helps sell what you do. Yeah. Certainly as a photographer, God, my photographer, me and Sam had, the images were okay, but they were just bossy people and they didn't get on with any of the guests. They just annoyed the guests. So that's like the opposite of you, and you want somebody like you around because it just makes the day run smoother. Couples can be quite nervous on the wedding days. I think if they got the supplier, certainly photographer who's guiding them through the day, if they're fun and friendly and engaging, it's just going to make their day so much better, isn't it?
As a fellow supplier, like, because I've worked with photographers, you know, every wedding, me and the photographer, more than any other supplier, you'll have this, we're there together all day.
Yeah.
So for me, working with a photographer like you, who is going to be not just do a killer job on the photos, but is going to be great to get on with. I've walked into bride prep rooms before, and you just start chatting to the bridesmaids, you're making them laugh and putting them at ease, and it makes my job easier because then I can join in on that, and it's much more organic, and we can be in sync versus a photographer that is a bit more sort of, say, discreet in inverted commas, when really they're just too shy to speak to people. And it makes for such a nicer environment, and it also brings out you get better results out of it as well, because they take to you instantly and they're put at ease a bit more, and then you can get closer and get better pictures. So then that feeds back into the end product. So they're not only having a better day, but they're having better products at the end of it as well.
Yeah, perfectly. Yeah.
On your website, it says.
We've referred to your website.
Here we go.
This is where most guests go.
Did I write this?
I've not updated that in a few years.
I did actually. I wrote this. I wrote this myself. I don't know which bit you're going to pick out, but I did write it myself.
Your website, AI has said about you.
Not AI.
No, it feeds into everything that we've been saying. At your wedding, I'm not just there as a photographer. I'm there to be an extension of the wedding party. So, and you've got examples of like helping the mother of the bride out with the wedding dress, hooking the little things and stuff like that.
Aye.
Many hands make light work.
So, and it like I say, it ties into everything that we've been saying already. How important do you think that is to be not just a photographer, but actually be an extension of the wedding day? What does that mean to you? Like, what does your job involve other than taking photos? When you turn up, how do you approach it?
I think the work, the photographs, the end product sort of is almost a given, if that makes sense. You have to be able to deliver.
By the time they've booked you on that.
And that almost then gets put aside from my point of view. And it's about, how do I fit into this wedding as quickly as possible on the day? Because it doesn't matter how much of a relationship I've built with the bride and groom ahead of their wedding day. Chances are I've not met a single other person to do with it. Every now and again I might have met a bridesmaid that's come to a meeting, a mum, but not many people. So you've got to kind of look at the rest of the wedding overall. How do I fit into that? How do I make everybody else relax? How do I give myself the opportunity to deliver what I've said I'm going to deliver? So it's almost a constant assessment the second you arrive as to what kind of crowd it is, what kind of day it's going to turn into, and where do you fit yourself into in amongst all of this. And every wedding's different. Everybody's got different things that are important to them. Everybody wants to do things in different ways. So you have to really kind of work out very, very quickly what all those different component parts are and how you can do your thing within that frame almost. And there's no sort of right or wrong with any of it, apart from I just always try and kind of do what I do, if that makes sense. So exactly like you say, it's turning up in the morning, trying to get everyone to relax straight away. It's not really about the camera. It's about, photographers here, but nobody needs to start worrying, oh, do I sit like this? Do I do that? What do I need to do? I want to get that out of people's heads as quickly as possible, and them to just kind of relax enough to go, oh, he's all right.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I'm not expecting people to go, oh, wow, he's amazing from minute one. I just want everyone to go, yeah, he's okay, he's all right. And then they can relax a little bit. And then as you go further through the day, it's about trying to get that kind of throughout the rest of the wedding party. And one of the things I'm always really keen to do at a wedding is, once the bride and groom have got married, is get a drink in their hands as quickly as possible and get them with everybody else rather than with me straight away. Just give them, even if it's only 20 minutes, that first 20 minutes is with their friends and family, so that they feel like they're at their own wedding. They feel like they're not missing out on all the important things, the plans that they put in place, the months and months of planning, the thousands of pounds of expense. They're not just getting dragged off straight away and they're missing out on the drinks reception. And sometimes you do have to go a bit quicker with, the next thing that you're going to do, whether it be family photographs, bride and groom stuff, because the weather might not be playing ball, there might be things like that to consider. But most of the time, it is about get a drink in your hands. I'm going to be miles away from you so that you can receive the hugs, have the little tear about an emotional moment in the ceremony, have that laugh about somebody saying something wrong. And also from selfish photographer point of view, I'm basically teeing up all the great documentary stuff by allowing that to unfold, because it waters it down if you don't let it happen as early as you possibly can do on a wedding day. If you drag the couple off straight away, bring them back half an hour, 45 minutes later, people will still go, oh, congratulations.
They don't quite get that,
but it's not as raw, it's not
pulse.
as... So if I can do that, as I say, from a selfish point of view, I'm giving myself some great stuff to shoot. But more importantly, everybody else there is realising, oh, we are allowed to speak to the bride and groom. They're not being dragged off. We are part of the drinks reception. We're not all looking at our watches going, I wonder what happens next. I wonder what time they're coming back. I wonder what time we sit down. They're actually going, isn't this nice, all having a drink together? And that is all very subconscious. Nobody's actively thinking that at that moment. But if I take a bride and groom off straight away, I can guarantee you, I can look over after 10 minutes and you can see people almost wondering the drinks reception away, or like it's not an important part of the day. When are we sitting down? Well, the drinks reception is one of the most important parts of the day, I think, in my humble opinion. It's one of the least, I hate to use the word formal, I don't mean it, that always gives the impression of, everyone stood in, a line like Victorian school children. But it's one of the least formal parts of the day, in that if you let the couple just be with everyone, they haven't got any responsibilities. Whereas as soon as they're sat down for the wedding breakfast, again, they're pretty much nailed to their table to eat, and it's all lovely and everything, but everything in a wedding has got, the different stages of the day that you go through, and for very good reason. We all know, what happens when we hear, we're going to do our wedding a bit different. You're like, don't do that. Do it like everyone suggests you should do it.
There's a format for a reason.
Because they genuinely work like that, because everyone's tried it a million different ways, and this is the way that works.
There's a reason why there's a typical order of the day.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean that your wedding is average or boring or less important than somebody. But as an event, real experts, not us, the people who actually run the venues and the caterers, have figured out that if we do this, it runs really well. It flows, everything. There's no big gaps. There's nothing. Nobody's starving. Nobody's too pissed by the time they sit down. Everything works as it should.
We're going to be dead maverick. We're not having a typical wedding. We're going to do speeches before instead of after.
Speeches before are mine and your favourites, not so much for this man. My favourite ever moment at a wedding a couple of years ago, where people decided they were going to do something completely different, was that they decided they were having a wedding breakfast, but they weren't going to put any tables and chairs out for it.
It's like throwing potatoes in people's mouths.
That happened. People had to go and collect plates of food, and it was proper knife and fork food. It wasn't buffet.
On the laps,
so
on the wall.
and they find it, but there was like 100 people there, and there was maybe seating for 10 people. Guess what happened within 10 minutes of food coming out? All the chairs and tables got wheeled out from the back room because they realised what a terrible mistake they'd made. And
how did you what were you supposed to do when you need to take pictures of all the individual tables of everyone?
Well, yeah, don't get me started on that.
So I'm wondering at what point in the proceedings before the wedding, if they told you that, what you must have thought, I've got a duty to tell them that's really shit. They can't do that.
I don't think I knew about that because
You
I
did,
certainly
right.
would have. Certainly would have said.
Do you meet all couples before the wedding day?
Yeah, to be honest with you, these days it's Zoom most of the time.
Or in some capacity?
Yeah.
So would you,
definitely.
Would you advise them on stuff like that? Advise them on
100%.
how to
Yeah.
run
I mean,
because at the end of the day, we are the experienced ones. They're doing it for the first time.
Yeah.
And they will probably appreciate your insights, whether you think that you're sticking your nose in or not.
something as extreme as that example. If I had known about it, I would have mentioned it, but I'd have probably just kind of resigned myself to the fact that they've clearly had the conversation with the venue and the caterer who've agreed to do it.
Yeah.
So it's not going to make much difference me saying it's a bad idea. They've probably been told that by people already. And as was the fact, all the tables and chairs appeared after about 10 minutes. But there's other things, certainly, although, you know, when we catch up for our last meeting, it's about just going into the minutest of detail, really, at every component part of the day to figure out how people are doing things, how they want me to sort of be involved in the different parts of the day. Most of the time, again, going back to, you know, saying my couples are the right couples for me, they kind of just go, you know what you're doing, we want you to do your thing most of the time.
That last meeting's just
Which
about
is-
that, isn't it?
yeah,
Reconnection
which is great.
and not so much on the detail. Certainly I get things down, but it's just that reconnection with the couple.
That's
Excited
testament
again.
to your branding and your message that comes across, that you do attract the right, like, your kind of couples, that they do, you know, you're consistently getting those. Going back to like what you said about after the ceremony, get a drink in their hand, let them have 20, like things like that. That is probably why I would say you're getting all these repeat bookings, and the couples not only recommend you, oh, that we had this, the photos are great, it's they go in above them. Do you find that they go above and beyond to recommend you, and that's why you get so much repeat business? Because it's not just a case of, yeah, this guy's photos are great, we had this guy. It's, you've got to get Jonny.
They're going to shout from the rooftops.
Because it's those subtle things that make the day better because of you, that, like you say, are almost subconscious at the time, but then they appreciate after the fact. And not only couple, but the guests, who are always potential clients, that you end up getting then repeat bookings so often. Have you got any other like practical tips, like the putting a drink in the hand and things that you do to help the day run smooth?
That's an interesting question. Practical tips. I don't know. It's difficult because I'm
some Jaeger in your top.
Yeah.
Hand it out. And,
I'm lucky. I work at consistently some amazing venues as well, where that kind of conversation we were talking about before doesn't happen because they're run brilliantly.
Yeah.
Everything is seamless and clockwork, and actually, as a result, I don't have to do a huge amount outside of what I do myself. Every now and again, you kind of end up at somewhere that might be a dry hire type venue that caterers catering, but they haven't got necessarily anybody kind of driving the wedding, and you feel like you end up being the wedding. Yeah, you end up being the wedding coordinator on the day, and it's fun. It's a bit more stressful, you know, but you kind of feel like you get a lot of fulfillment out of it because you really help him pull everything together. But as I say, most of the time these days, I'm really lucky. I work at some really, really nice venues on a very regular basis, and I can turn up and do my thing and not worry about some of the technicalities.
It's your style, isn't it? But it's great that you are willing to slip into that role of the wedding coordinator. And that's just great. That's something else that another photographer probably wouldn't do or feel comfortable doing. And we always talk about because there's so many photographers and videographers, and how can you stand out within your niche? And that's certainly one of the things, be willing to step up and do those little things.
I just think it makes all the difference in the world, I really do, in terms of like repeat referral, but also just like how you can then use that to promote yourself and promote your approach, And I think when I like educating potential clients on this is how your photographer relationship could be. Like people see you selfieing with your couples and they send in your presents and it's not, well, they obviously really love him, and it's not. And I think a lot of the guests turn up at a wedding and just assume the photographer's going to be doing the standard kind of thing, and then you book one like, well, we don't really like having a photo taken, but we've got to have a photographer, and it's just like I feel like it's important to show that you can have a good relationship with a photographer and have someone there that you can just get on with.
Yeah, I think one of the things that always and it happens at almost 100% of weddings, that people almost have an assumption as to what is involved with wedding photography, and it's usually at the point where, and I try and always have my plan A when it comes to shooting bride and groom stuff is I like to do it right at the end of the drink reception, which sometimes if the speeches are first, videographers are a bit mithered about because they've got to mic people up before the speeches, so we haven't got much time before we go in. And I'm not being sort of weird about that. I try and, as you well know, Adam, I try and work alongside videographers, but I think a lot of the time the videographer's expectation of the photographer is that they're going to lead whatever the bride and groom couple's part of the day is as well. So they often ask you what your plan is, and I'll say, the weather's good, so literally when they get called to take their seats for the wedding breakfast, the guests, I'm going to take the bride and groom then, because it'll take 10-15 minutes for everyone to sit down. So I'm not actually dragging them out of the drink reception. I'm giving them more time with everybody. So it works really well. But it's funny when you kind of sidle up as everybody's going in. The bride and groom are sort of finishing conversations with people, and I sneak up and go, well, bring your drinks, we'll go for a little wander now. Somebody always says, as I say, it's almost 100% of the time, somebody goes, oh, have you got to go and have more pictures? I'm like, we literally haven't done any yet. But and it's not that they've seen me doing they've seen me around, but they just assume that the bride and groom must have been stood, in front of you almost the entire drink reception. Yeah. When they haven't, they've been with another group of friends over there who haven't necessarily. And it's funny, the bride and groom then kind of try and explain that, and there's confusion on guests' face, and I always just kind of find that mildly amusing. But I think that's a hangover from years gone by as to what wedding photography was, and it was very much it's about the bride and groom, so you haven't got time to have a drink. We need to get X, Y, Z and do all these.
Mine and Sam's wedding was exactly the same as that. I mean, I'm going back 18 years or so, and as soon as we finished the ceremony, they just took us. But they took us for the whole drinks reception. All we could see was our friends all having a great time. I was like, oh, can we just go and No. And then as soon as they finished their photographs, we're sitting down to dine. Yeah. We'd feel we'd missed our drinks. So that's that old school style, isn't it? And then they left. Yeah. You just stick around for the night. It was a nightmare.
I love working with, and I go back to photographers because we've got you here, and because that's who I spend most of my day with on a wedding. When they're not someone of when it's not working with you, and I have got one of those photographers that is maybe a bit annoying and a bit less considerate, I don't mind it because it makes me a little bit better.
Everybody's always involved with themselves.
So the photographer will go, well, we need to, right, ceremony's done, we need to go and get the pictures, and you can see the couple's faces dying a little bit, and
it does make you wonder though,
more and more,
both ways round. How has that couple booked you? To do what you do, but has booked a very contradictory approach photographer. And I think that the same when I turn up at weddings, and it's not you, or it's not one of my videographer pals who I work with regularly, and it's somebody dead old school. I'm like, how have they booked me? How have they booked all these other suppliers that I know are right for them? But ended up, sometimes it's a budget thing though.
I'd love to pick the suppliers to my weddings. I really would. There's so many weddings that I do, and they're so good. And it's like, I wish Adam was it. I wish Johnny was it. I wish Tom. Because you want to experience it with your friends.
I think I had one earlier this year where it was a case of the photographers and the couple just clearly didn't have any idea about each other, and the photographers had their thing of what they were planning to do, and the couple had a different expectation of how the photographers would be, and it just didn't work at all. And I could see the couple getting so annoyed, and I was there trying to and more if I see that these days, I will step in and be like, well, why don't we do it this way? And I'll go to the couple, are you guys okay? Because my North Star is that they're not stressed out and they're having time with the guests and enjoying themselves and not feeling like they've got to do look. But also a little bit, I'm like, if I do this, it'll make me look better. So it gets to the end of the day, and they do. Like in this case, it was, we're so glad you were here because like you've been dead great. And the other guys weren't. But and I had that same thought of, well, why did you book photographers like that? You could have had Johnny. You would have been perfect for this wedding. But I think in their case, it was just, I think they booked me first in that situation, and then they'd gone, well, we need a photographer, and the venue recommended or something like that, and they'd just not put. So I think it's where the couple's priorities
exactly
are.
That sometimes.
Sometimes they put loads of research and thought into one supplier, and then just happy to go with the venue recommendation for that.
Yeah.
Right. So you mentioned your great relationship with wedding venues, and I'll let you ask the question. But one thing that when I speak to other photographers about when certain venues crop up in conversation, I've worked with other photographers that have gone, wow, there's no point chatting to that venue because Jonny Draper's got his feet well under the table now. And it's almost like bloody Jonny Draper's taken that little pond. I'm never going to get in that one. He's got his claws well in. And it's a testament to you of how strong your relationships with venues and certain suppliers and
I'm going to give the direct question on this one. I think I'd be interested to hear what he says.
It's how you've created these relationships and maintained them to such a strong extent over the years, where you are the guy and everyone associates you with that venue, and no one else gets a look in, and all the other photographers are annoyed about it.
Yeah, I know. How the hell does he do it?
How'd you do it?
So I was going to say, Johnny's just given such a good in-depth description of how he runs the wedding day. I think any wannabe photographer, just that is it. I mean, that's the way that I would do it if I was
even
a
a
photographer.
hair and makeup florist.
Yeah,
any type of supplier that's
he's
on
just
the day.
put that out there perfectly. But I just want to follow on from that. We know that you target your venues where you want to work. Not just because they're around the corner from where you live, but just because you know they're very good and they're brilliant places to be. That's going to attract your ideal type of couple, and you've done that perfectly. How'd you do it?
Yeah, it's some of it it's a bit of a chicken and egg sometimes, isn't it? You know, the first time you work at a venue is an opportunity, but how do you get the first time at a venue that you want to work at if you haven't got an inquiry for it, if you haven't got
As
any
Adam
bookings
said,
for it?
Before that, how have you like researched venues? How have you found the right venues to work at?
Just look where he lives.
Does it help that
Close to
15-minute radius from my house.
Well, for anyone listening, you do have a plethora of venues, very good venues, very close to you. But you consciously like to work at the close by ones, don't you? I know you go further afield.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, and I did used to go much further afield.
Great to be 10 minutes from your house, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a funny one really, because the venues around by us, they haven't all been there for 20 years. They've opened in various different stages over the years. And when you hear about a new venue opening and, you know, the rumour mill as to what it's going to be and the kind of place, you know, the kind of bride and groom they're going to be targeting, and that all kind of gets the spidey senses tingling a little bit, and you kind of go, that sounds cool, I like the idea of that. And I think it's always about, first and foremost, not missing out on the opportunity when it arises. And sometimes you don't know what that opportunity is or when it's going to arise, but it's being ready to react to it. So it's doing doing your job well first and foremost when you do get that opportunity, and also, you know, not burning the place down. You know, don't do ridiculous things. Don't stick in people's heads for the wrong reasons. Don't be a dick. It can be very, very frustrating initially. You know, if you want a wedding somewhere and you haven't got an inquiry for it, and obviously because of the lead times that we all work to as well, you know, we're getting inquiries for 12, 18 months, 2 years, even longer than that down the line. Yeah. You could get your inquiry and booking for this dream venue, but it could still be 2 years away. 2 years before you get a chance to shoot a wedding.
And by that point, there's already been loads of suppliers that have already got the footing.
There could have been 300 weddings there in that 2 years. So
what do you do? Is it wedding fairs? Is it like offering to do...
Do you contact them because you've no booking there at the start? Do you knock on the door. Oh, you're a new venue. I'm Johnny. I live around the corner. This would be ideal.
There's been a bit of that over the years. There's been a bit of, can I shoot some stuff for you? Is there anything you need? You're new, you're just opening. Can I put a girl in a dress for you and give you some, this is what it's going to look like, when our garden is finished or in the ceremony space. And this, as a photographer and video, we've got, tools at our disposal to actually give people some content these days before they are even up and running.
Which is all anyone wants.
And, it's dead easy for people to shoot stuff on their phones, but it'll still never look the same as, a decent photographer or videographer rocking up and shooting it from the right angle at the right time of day with nice lighting, so there's all kinds of little reasons you can almost invent to put yourself in front of the right person. And
it's a good one, that. A new venue just opened that don't have content or portfolio or whatever. You could ring them up and go, I'm going to bring them. It doesn't matter what type of supplier you are. I'm going to bring a model, a photographer. We're going to dress it with flowers. Like, do you want some content?
Yeah.
Bosh, you in?
Potentially, as long as you don't burn the place down or do anything ridiculous while you're there. But that gives you your opening to the conversation then, and that gives you the opportunity to be at the front of their minds when somebody is then making that inquiry. Do you know any good photographers? Oh yeah, this guy actually just turned up randomly a few weeks ago, but he's done these and he was really nice. We liked him.
Yeah,
that can be. That's one example. There's a million different ways, and sometimes you've got to be a bit thick-skinned. You've got to be prepared for people to kind of go, sorry, we've already got something that we've put together as a proposition for our potential brides and grooms. It absolutely is, yeah. But when you do get the opportunity, you've got to, grab it with both hands. And going back to what we were talking about before, for me, it has always very much about being connecting with people. So it is about finding out who the key people are at the venues and trying to build that relationship. And again, circling back to what we said before, that can't be fake either.
Yeah.
Obviously, the reason I'm knocking on their door is because I'd like to do weddings at your venue, but I have to connect with you genuinely. You have to like me, I have to like you. We have to be able to say nice things about each other that make people want to kind of go, oh, I'll have a look at his website, or I'll have a look at Instagram.
It sounds really simple to just say, well, just be a people person and just get on with people, but it's so instrumental, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, it's like your best mate, well, I'm assuming your best mates in your life now are your wedding pals.
Yeah. Oh, have been for...
My best mates are my wedding pals.
Yeah. Me and you, we've been best pals for quite a few years. And and genuinely,
Is it as all-consuming as it appears? Like, you literally live, breathe... Because we've not even touched on the fact that Johnny's wife and you together you own a bridal boutique as well. So you've got that business with Emma.
Yeah.
Which we could maybe get Emma on and talk about that separately as a different wedding business. But
that would be ace if she agreed to that.
You have to speak very nicely to
her. She'd be fine.
No, but you're right. It's when you talk about it, you try and explain it in just an easy conversational way, but it isn't necessarily as easy as you kind of.
Well, you're living and breathing it, aren't you?
Yeah,
with everything that you do.
I suppose in our house definitely that's all we talk about is weddings, but it's better than carrying bricks up a ladder 10 hours a day, isn't it?
It's like you design your life around the world of weddings. I put this down here. You've designed your life around weddings, and I suppose I have in a way, and I suppose you have really, haven't you? It does become your life.
You fit
but
your
what
holidays
a great life.
around it. You fit your timetable around it.
We turn
your friends
wedding
become your wedding.
Yeah,
your
we turn wedding opportunities into holidays. We've been very lucky like that over the years to go and shoot a wedding, wherever it might be. I was in Marbella, Clang a few weeks ago, and we did that wedding and turned it into a holiday, because that gave us that opportunity to do it.
It's like you said, you're not carrying bricks for a living, and it's why would you not want to, revolve your life around it? Because it's
I also think,
world.
what you said, Harry, about us being best mates. That's like, all jokes aside, is true, and we have been for a long time now. And when we met originally, we met as two people who were sort of, I suppose, probably trying to find our way in the turn of a place where the wedding industry was, if that makes sense. We probably didn't realise it at the time,
it was changing, wasn't it?
But as we look back on it now, and you kind of think about the things that we were doing, we're involved in, and how things were making that move from still quite old school to
Was it the dawn of social media, sort of?
Well,
Facebook arrived in
something else,
2000 and probably a bit earlier than 2007.
And weddings
I think
have changed. They've gone more sort of personal and DIY.
100%.
People were looking for something different. They didn't want the old school photographer anymore, but they weren't quite sure what they wanted. They didn't want the boring dinner when nothing's really going on. Oh, then I kind of fulfil that role. I don't want the traditional Toastmaster. I want something different, but
it's like celebrants
fun,
now.
you know.
Yeah.
Social media has exposed people to millions of ideas that are suddenly at the, on the phones in front of them.
Yeah.
That they go, oh, we didn't know we could do that, but that's great. I like that. We'll do that at ours, and
Yeah.
it's changed the game completely, I suppose.
Yeah. But you end up meeting a lot of like-minded people. Well, you kind of find your own, you know, your people who you end up genuine mates with. It's because you have, well, it's the same in normal life as well, but because you have a very similar outlook, you have a very similar approach to how you're doing things, so you've got a lot in common. You've got a lot of stuff to talk about, so you have that sort of familiar ground. And actually, take the industry side of it out. It doesn't matter what the industry is, but actually we all work for ourselves, which is probably the biggest thing that we have in common. And having, almost a support group of real mates who do the same thing, ish, but ultimately we're working for ourselves, so the buck stops with us. If we're not busy anymore, it's our own fault. But having people who understand that's what kind of helps, build those friendships as well.
I think during that, I hate to bring up the COVID thing, but that was, I think, really instrumental for a lot of people in our industry. Everybody's reaching out to each other and chatting and talking, and me and you and Johnny and Tom and Andy, and we had that support network. We're all going through the same thing.
What are you going to do? I don't know. I was thinking about doing this. What about you? Yeah, I'm not sure. Let's give it another week and see what the next update is, or what venues are saying. And
it was brilliant. That
well, they say, don't they, surround yourself with like-minded people, positive people, people where you want to be. Surround yourself with those sorts of people. Do you consciously lean on your network and in that sense?
Yeah, I mean, but probably not as directly as that. I really love working with my mates.
Me too. Yeah.
Those
makes the day go so much better. Doesn't it?
Yeah, and people who book what they perceive, and it always gets tagged the same thing, Dream Team. But people really feel like when they've booked this group of people who they know each other, they've been very deliberate about that because they know. That you all know each other, and they want that. That's what they want. They want to feel like they are almost part of it. I always think.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? They kind of almost feel like that. We might be able to be mates with these guys. Do you know?
Part of the gang.
Yeah, that's what I always kind of think comes across, and I love that. Yeah. And they are always mega days. They are.
Going back to the targeting with the venues, and maybe we should touch on the social media. I mean, you touched on some tips there. Knock on the doors, offer your services for free, start building up recommendations. When you do get a booking at the venue, be great to work with, etc. All that kind of stuff. Social media side, because you're almost seeing sometimes that you actually promote a venue or some different venues. You're not doing that. You're just tagging them into certain things. That's deliberate, I'm sure. But talk me through how you would use your social media to target a venue, if you like, or help a venue.
This is something that you do at the start of the year, isn't it? Am I right in saying that in January you'll go, right, I need to post about these venues and this sort of content?
Yeah, we've talked about it before, and it definitely is targeting, and it's definitely deliberate, and I think about different ways of... Because that time of year in our industry is a very popular time of year for everybody to kind of go, need to do loads of social media, need to promote myself, need to update my website, need to get myself out there.
Yeah, but it's because brides and grooms at start of the year, right, let's get into the wedding planning properly.
But you're potentially going to get lost in this huge swarm of everybody else doing the same thing as you. So it's thinking about, how can I still do that, but make sure I'm the one that catches people's eyes. So, I look at what I kind of describe as my key venues, the ones I want to keep going back to work at. And I want to put some, content out there at that time of the year that is very specific to each of those venues, that I think is what the kind of couples that I'm looking to book me are looking for at those venues. So I'm really thinking about, if I'm doing like a carousel on Instagram, 10 photographs, that's only 10 photographs in one post. So which 10 photos are they going to be that shows off what I do to the best of my ability and is aspirational? That couple have booked that venue and they want absolutely killer stuff. So what can I show them that's going to make them think we need to get in touch with him? So I think a lot about the specifics of the content. But through the course of the year, I think it's about supporting venues and other suppliers as well. So there's quite a lot of my venues, local venues at the moment, that are promoting open evenings, open days, things like that.
Ready for the autumn. Yeah.
Ready for, the next wave of newly engaged couples. So I am keeping my eye on all of their Instagram accounts. Literally, as soon as I see some stuff, get it out there.
Yeah.
Sharing their stuff, but then backing it up again with what I've shot there. So that hopefully they then reshare that way. So I'm helping promote their open day.
As soon as they're mentioning advertising an open day, you're jumping on the back of that, sharing it to show your support, but then sharing your stuff to go.
And again, thinking very specifically about what do I share of my stuff at that venue that I know that they will reshare, that is in line with what they're using to promote their open days. So I often will look at those and go, actually, they're not my killer images that I want to use to promote myself, but they're venue shots.
They're gonna reshare that
because they're important to them. They want to show people as much of the venue as possible. So I'm going to share a couple of my drone shots, a couple of ceremony room setups, a couple of wedding breakfast setups, a couple of night do setups, because I know they'll share them straight away. Because it's completely in line with what they're trying to promote at that moment in time.
If you've got a beautiful shot of a couple at golden hour in a field and you've tagged the venue, but they're not going to be interested in sharing that because it doesn't show the venue at all.
Yeah,
it's the field at the back of the venue.
Yeah,
they're not going to be interested in that. They'll want the pictures where it shows the venue and you can see it in the background, sort of thing.
Yeah, and then those shots, they're the ones that they'll share when it's brand new content. Here's sneak peek of yesterday's wedding. Boom, they'll share that straight away, and they're not worried that it's a golden hour shot in the field. They're like, oh, it's new content, so we'll get it out there. But when you start kind of trying to scratch the surface of what do these guys all want, and I do genuinely go one further with that as well, and actually speak to them and ask them what they're looking for. Going into this summer
in a post.
No. Speak to them directly in the office.
Right.
I've got X amount of weddings this summer. What do you need?
What do you need for your promotion or your website?
If you can get us a drone shot from this angle when the grass is
so
cut.
when you're there on the wedding day, you're asking them that. I'm back here in a couple of weeks. Do you need anything?
Anything specific you need? The wedding breakfast room's going to be set up. It's going to look really beautiful if we can get some great shots of that. If you can get them portrait for us so we can use them on Insta stories, no problem. So it's kind of being a bit more proactive with them, asking them the question. And again, you're being helpful. You're giving them stuff that they need, and you're keeping your name at the front of their minds when people ask.
What you think they might want, they might not want.
Yeah,
and that's perfect.
It's
next level, isn't it?
It's the exact same thing as you see when a bride and groom. You think you've shot the most incredible bride and groom portraits at a wedding that you've ever shot, and then the first thing when they get their photographs from you, their full gallery, the first thing they share is them signing the register, and you're like, why?
That's not the photo. It's not the photo.
But you realise it's an important photograph. It's them actually signing the register on their wedding day. It's a really important moment to them. So you can't second guess just because you think something is better.
Yeah, exactly.
You've got to deliver that because that's what they've booked you for. Yeah. But ultimately, they're going to use, here's us stood in the church doorway because that's full length, shows my dress off, and it shows the nice, church doorway or venue doorway, whatever it might be. This is the venue that we got married at, just perfectly symmetrical behind them.
The killer arty picture isn't probably going to translate so well to grandma, is it?
So no, it's not. So
you've got to post the family friendly one.
You have. So it's kind of just being a little bit, I suppose, open-minded to all that. Everybody always says, which I agree with, share what you want to get more of, if that makes sense. So when I'm shooting at the venues I want to work at, I am making sure I'm sharing his gorgeous bride and groom shot walking past the front of the venue, whatever it might be. And it's trying to, I mean, obviously I do groups and I'll do as many groups as people want, but I don't really share them on Instagram because that's not what people kind of in the front of their minds think that they want. They do, they all want them, which is fine because they are important photographs, but it's giving people, as I said before, the sort of the aspiration of this is what I want my wedding to be.
Yeah, it's like when somebody wants to book me, they want a fun, engaging wedding where people look around a good time. So that's why I share my reels of people having fun in the room.
Yeah.
You know, nothing else, and that's because that they can imagine their wedding like that. Oh, you want that same vibe, want that same atmosphere. Oh, and here he is doing it perfectly.
Yeah.
This is the guy we need. Exactly the same, isn't it?
Right, so you go above and beyond and out your way, besides the photography, for couples on the day to give them the best day possible, because that in the hopes that will, you know, make them love you more and they recommend you more. Same with the venues. You're going out of your way to help them, to offer them stuff, and that helps with your repeat referral from venues. You've got this phrase, don't be a dick, that we've mentioned on this. Oh, Johnny says don't be a dick. Johnny always says don't be a dick. And we've mentioned it a few times on the pod. And that's... I assume that's your phrase that you use
mantra.
In your thing.
Johnny's mantra.
Yeah.
And it probably sounds self-explanatory, doesn't it?
I mean, I'm guessing it encompasses everything we've spoken about in the last hour. But why do you say that? What does it mean to you? Like, that's advice to a supplier.
Yeah. It's about not shooting yourself in the foot, I suppose, more than anything. Every wedding, we're sort of circling back to a lot of things we talked about already, but every wedding's an opportunity to generate more business for yourself. It's on a number of different levels. It's an opportunity to shoot new great images, to give you new content, make new connections with other suppliers, the venue, with the bridegroom, their friends and family, bridal party. You know, you've got all these different potential avenues that you can take advantage of, as long as you're not a dickhead. And it's kind of as simple as that. You know, you can get people's backs up so quickly by saying the wrong thing or looking across the room in the wrong way. You can be the sort of almost nothing throwaway comment that you can't possibly think that anybody would be offended by. But if you get it wrong, you get it wrong. So, you know, it's about reading the room most of the time, I think, as well. You know, there's different ways I do bounce into brides prep and grooms prep, depending on what sort of crowd it is, really. You know, you try to read the room really quickly, sort of ease into whatever's going on there, make them all feel as comfortable as possible, as quickly as possible. You can't
approach everyone the same, can
no,
you? You
absolutely
can't be
not.
this type of personality all the time, because it's not going to work.
Yeah.
Although you try and attract that as often as possible, it's not necessarily going to work every time.
Yeah. It's funny, I remember a makeup artist saying to me, it was quite a few years ago, and I'd worked with her a few weeks on the bounce, and this particular wedding morning was really quiet, because there wasn't a big bridal party. There was the bride and maybe two bridesmaids and mum. And it was very relaxed, low-key. It wasn't boring or anything like that. It was just calm.
Yeah.
So I'd kind of come in, said hello to everyone. We're having a little chat, just shooting some nice stuff.
You pick up on it straight away, don't you?
And the makeup artist, when she was moving people in between chairs, she came up to me. She went, "Is everything okay?" I went, Yeah. What do you mean? She went, "Oh, you're just really quiet today." I went, and in my head, I'm straight away like, but last week's wedding was jumping.
Yeah.
So I can fall into the same approach, but I can't do that this morning. Yeah. You know, because it frightened all these people to death. But she thought there was something wrong with me.
I call it being a social chameleon.
Chameleon, perfect word. Yeah.
Change for your surroundings.
Just react to it.
But again, that's not about being fake. It's about reading the room and fitting into it.
It's just about being respectful, isn't it?
Yeah.
I suppose when it is quiet like that,
yeah.
you can't just come in and like Mr. Personality and
turn the music up really loud and
just retreat into themselves. And as a photographer and videographer, like that's the worst thing that you want.
So sometimes you just got to be a bit more gentle.
It's not just about pleasing the couple. There's so many different eyeballs on you all the time that you might not be aware of. You've just got to don't be a dick, but remember and maintain that all the time, all the way through the wedding, even when you just think you're just chilling at the back of you know, when the guests are having the meal and you're just having your downtime, you've still got to be not a dick.
Yeah.
Because you're still...
But, you know, the other thing, you know, it would be remiss of me to claim that I've never not been a dick. Every now and again, you fall through the net yourself and you've said something and you're like, oh, shit, I've really upset that person now. And you learn from it, don't you? And you try not to do it again.
You can guess what he said. I won't mention the phrase, but I worked with Howard. He said a phrase to a bridal party and they ate it up. God. I thought, brilliant, I'm going to bookmark that and use that one. So then I tried to say it to them on my next wedding and it went down like a lead balloon. Because coming from the entertainer who's just entertained their socks off and he's, you know, cheeky chappy, and he said it to him and they're all like, and they're after the meal, they've experienced him for an hour and he said this and they're going, no, what's he like? Yeah, great. Creepy videographer who says it to the bridal party early on in the day doesn't go down anywhere near as well. And it wasn't anything scandalous, it was just a throwaway phrase but honestly I could have died. And they retreated from me the rest of the day.
That was it, game over.
I lost them.
Yeah.
So it's knowing your role and knowing
can happen. You learn from it though, don't you?
You know what's right, what's the appropriate way.
You
for
learned
you
it was the wrong thing to say in that time. It didn't work.
Yeah, because I was like, well, Howard said it and it was great. So why did it go wrong for me? Well, it's because I'm not the entertainer. I'm the videographer, and people don't think that those words would come out of my mouth. So you've got to learn your role and you've got to be respectful of the timing and
and it's because you can. It's because you're not a dick. Why that would matter to you, and you change it and you do it differently next time.
100%. I'd never do it again.
You have to say what it was.
Right.
Interesting to know.
There's a couple of wrapping up questions that we ask everyone, but I want to know how you get presents out of every single couple. Is that a myth or does that happen? You get presents a lot.
Yeah.
I think he's answered the question.
Yeah.
But is there anything?
I never get presents.
No, I think Jonny drops seeds. I think he drops seeds, and you know, I reckon he does it when he's chatting to potential couples or couples that have already booked him maybe in the last meeting. Oh, I did a great wedding this. They got me a crate of Stella.
I have all these bottles of Jägermeister behind me in the Zoom call.
Yeah. I never expect it.
Can you believe it?
Come on, there must be something that you do to plant seeds.
Do you find that if you get a present, if you're lucky to get a present and you share it on social media, because oh my god, I got this from a couple, it's amazing, thank you. Do you find that's like encourages the next person to then reciprocate and do the same?
Guilty.
Of course he does. He says, oh, it's so organic, my relationship with my couples. Everything's deliberate. It's social media.
My favourite one, because I have got bottles of Jaeger for years and years and years.
Don't even like it.
I do. I love it. But I don't. Do you know what though? I've got it for so long that I don't even remember the first one that I got.
Right.
Why I got it. I must have said something about it, and then this bottle of Jaeger lands, put it on social media, next wedding, bottle of Jaeger. And I ended up doing a wedding for a girl. The bride worked in the marketing department of Jägermeister UK.
No way, I remember actually. Yeah.
And she got me a personalised bottle of Jägermeister with my name printed on the label as a thank you gift. I'm like, that one's never getting drunk.
It's such a nice, and it's a testament to how great you are with your clients, because they're paying us a fair amount, like a hell of a lot of money sometimes, and then they still want to get you a present as well.
It's
like,
crazy. Genuinely, it's crazy
lovely.
Because it's like it's absolutely not required, but it's always hugely appreciated.
If any
I
couples
think it's going above and beyond though, isn't it? I actually got a tip from a wedding the other week, which I rarely get tips.
I've had that a couple of times. Yeah.
Have you?
But
I've never had a tip.
Which was the wedding that it was.
Old school groom, we just shoved a note in my hand on the slide.
Excellent.
Yeah, I remember what it was. And again, is it because I've gone above and beyond? Because I actually printed out the best man's speech on cue cards for him. And helped him with it. I actually wrote the speech and did a version.
You wrote his speech
for him
and delivered it for him.
I knew he was struggling with it, so I made a really simplified version and printed it and I gave it. And I remember now that is the one that I got the tip on. And I think it was because I went above and beyond and did something that I would, which you wouldn't expect a wedding entertainer to do at your wedding, you know.
Is there anything else you want to ask Jonny before we do the closing?
No, I think we should do the closing ones. There's the story and what would you be and
what's your most outrageous, hilarious story that you've encountered at a wedding?
How did you get over it? How do you address it?
I seem to associate you with something to do with the fire service or an ambulance or something.
Oh yeah, I can tell that. The worst ones I can't tell you, but the fire brigade. Yeah, bad times. So the fire brigade.
You don't have to tell that one if it's embarrassing.
It was embarrassing, but in my defence, I had double checked with the venue that it was okay to do this. Oh. They had said yes. So the venue, the bride and groom had said ahead of their wedding, we'd like to do a photograph with smoke bombs. And normally I'd just go, yeah, fine, whatever. But because of where the venue was and the type of venue it was, I said, you need to check with the venue because X, Y, Z. So they said, fine, we'll check. Came back, venue said, no problem. Great. We go out during room turnaround, set a load of smoke bombs off, shooting pictures to the two of them outside. Fire alarm goes off. Oh, shit. So just think, it's okay, somebody will be able to go inside, because the smoke bombs set fire alarms off. They do if they're too close to them.
Fair enough, yeah.
They're smoke. So we've had it. Do you remember that wedding we did at Mitten Hall?
Yeah, I was just thinking of it then.
And Leslie Ann came flying out going, Jonny Draper, you dickhead, all the smoke alarms are going.
Don't be a dick.
Because it was down the bottom and on the smoke list, he came up the top and filled the wedding breakfast room with smoke. Like, what the hell was going on?
Yeah, but it would, yeah.
That was a mega wedding. That was Amy and Morgan's wedding, that.
That one. So she's the girls on Dragon's Den?
Yeah. That was a mega wedding.
Not the t-shirt one that Tom didn't get. Anyway, carry on. Yeah.
That was also a mega wedding. So anyway, I just assumed that they'd be able to turn the fire alarm off. So I go running in to go, don't worry, it was just me. Everyone's getting evacuated because it's a listed building. So if the fire alarm goes off, it connects directly to the local fire station and they have to dispatch fire engine to investigate. So there was 150 people outside on the car park, including me and the bride and groom. The groom ran away when it happened. What? Ran and hid round the corner because he thought he was going to get in trouble.
No way.
So the fire engine turns up. I go running over to them straight away to go, I'm so sorry, lads, but this is what we were setting off. It's just drifted in. And they said, we still have to go in and check just in case it was coincidence and there's nothing inside. Shit. So everybody stood outside, all brought their drinks out. They go in, come out 10, 15 minutes later, and he has a piece of paper in his hand, the chief fire officer.
Yeah.
And he comes over to me and he goes, is it you I need to speak to about this call-out bill then? And I think like my colour must have drained from my face. And he went, yeah, there's £1,000 to settle. So I'm like... And he went, only kidding, mate, don't worry about it. I was like, you got me then. And he went, don't worry, these things happen. We're only sat having our tea around the corner. I said, do you want to do any pictures of the fire engine before we leave? I went, seriously? He went, yeah. So we'll put the blue lights on. And anyway, we ended up with it was like, you know when the fire engine is at the school fair or whatever.
Yeah.
And people are sitting in it with the helmets on. So all the guests are getting in it, helmet on. They picked up the bride in a fireman's lift, all that. It ended up being really good.
Negative into a positive.
Yeah, but it was like the night do was delayed by about an hour, but everyone loved it.
Brilliant. He brought a fire engine.
Yeah.
So that was sort of a mildish. It was embarrassing.
I love
but also
that
one of my favourite embarrassing ones, which was from a couple of years ago, was I was walking into bride's prep in the morning. I'd been back and forth, but it was still like way hours before anyone was getting dressed. So you know, like normal, you knock on, don't you? But it was at Owen House. So, you know where you go in
the bridal
prep bit. So the doors were open, and I'd been in like 4 times already, and it was still like an hour and a half away from people to even think about getting dressed. So I just wandered back in. And as I wandered back in, bearing in mind there's a bathroom in there as well that could have been used, the mother of the bride was just bent double in the middle of the room in just her... knickers,
nice.
pulling her tights. So I walk in, I screamed, she then screamed, I ran away, and the next all I could hear is like this entire room of girls laughing their heads off.
Excellent.
I come back in, come back in, apologising. Mother of the bride thought it was the funniest thing ever, and I was just like, that's it. I'm always, doesn't matter what time of day it is now, I'm always knocking now, yeah. So that one was a bit mortifying, but Yeah, anything more serious than that, I can't tell you about, I'm afraid.
You've had it where you've been in bridal prep and they've sort of all dropped the dresses and you're like, how awkward is this? But
all of a sudden, the ceiling's
care.
really interesting when they do that. I'm like, it's okay, I'll step outside it. No, don't worry about it. And you're like, oh,
it's all right.
Interesting.
It's only boobs.
Thing up there that's going on.
I find it the hardest when they say, no, don't worry, just stay here. And
awful.
Because you do, you're like...
It's awful. It's like...
The light looks nice. And, it just mortifies me. And they're like, oh, don't worry about it, honestly. Like, I'm sure you've seen it. And I'm like, yeah, I have, but I don't want to look.
Brilliant, few stories there, Johnny. Thank you. I know how he's going to answer the next question. But I'll let him say.
Well, what is
the next question is,
yes.
If you were not a wedding photographer, what other niche or what other business would you go into in the wedding industry?
In the wedding industry?
It's got to be a wedding industry based business.
And it can't be bridal boutique.
Because we know you've already got a bridal boutique with them.
Do you know what?
I know how you're going to answer
No,
this.
I don't think you do.
What would you do?
Because I only said this to somebody the other day. And I think my serious answer, if we're doing it seriously, because I know what you're thinking, my serious answer is I quite like the idea of the wedding car driver as a sort of an opportunity to help keep things calm, everything nice and relaxed on the morning.
Harry Meredith said.
And it'd be a nice sort of...
You're driving the bride to the church.
It's a good responsibility. It does come with it because it comes with the pressure of, oh my God, I hope we don't break down. What if we go the wrong way? There's a lot of pressures attached to it. But I think you have the opportunity to give people this really relaxed last few minutes before they go and get married if you do it right. So I kind of like the idea of that.
What's the not serious answer?
The not serious answer would be... it's very specific, but if there was requirements for a Les Mis flash mob at weddings, then I'd love to be involved in that on a weekly basis. If anyone fancies that, I could do the full 8 parts of it.
Leader of the Les Mis flash mob.
Yeah, and everybody else in the flash mob as well. I could do all the parts.
I thought you were going to say like a drummer in a band.
No, you have to say too late.
I'm getting married in a couple of years. I
should have known.
I'm not unkeen on Les Mis.
That's why the driver thing's so ideal for John. He's got his own. He's out
home for lunch. No, do you know? I've stepped behind the kit once or twice over the years with Gav and the boys.
I think that was Andy Murphy's. He wanted to be the front man, didn't he? The singer of a band, and a bit like Gav. I think he said what he'd like to be.
Yeah, but I mean, with every great gig that wedding bands do,
there's 3 of the shit ones.
Yeah, and I mean that in the nicest possible way because it doesn't mean that the wedding's not a great wedding, but
it's
sometimes they're just not. They're just not dancers, are they?
Too
do you know
early.
What I mean?
The food's out. No one's on the dance floor, and you really feel for them because you can tell they're like
they've got 45 minutes to get through playing to no one.
Yeah.
So our last guest, Francesca Sings, said because this was a question from her, and we're going to ask you to leave a question for the next guest. So this was her question for the next guest, which is you. What is one myth about the wedding industry that you would like to put to bed?
A myth about the wedding industry?
Something
thought it was a good
along
question.
The lines of things like, people always think weddings are this and da-da-da. Is there a myth that needs put
I think
to bed?
one of the things that people always say to you when you tell them what you do is, oh wow, it must be amazing working, on all these people's special days, and which it is, but that's their.
I want to put that to bed. It's rubbish.
Not at all. But what I mean is that's their sort of level of hearing that you work in weddings is, wow, it must just be so much fun.
Yeah,
and they have no
easy.
concept of what it actually takes to deliver a great wedding. We are just a component part of each wedding. So to actually pull the full thing together, and it does come with its stresses and anxieties and worries and nerves and difficulties, and that's the kind of thing that we all try and help people with when we're working with them.
Patronising, like, oh, that's nice. Like that must be nice for you.
No, do you know what? Not really. No.
And do you earn enough doing that? And it's like maybe older people. I'm like, I work in weddings, and is that your full-time job. You go, yeah.
Do you know what? I've never
Is that
I've
enough?
never had that. I know a lot of people get that.
I'm
as well.
sat there thinking,
and what
you've
else?
got
What
no
do you do?
idea.
What do you do in the week? I've
Yeah,
never
yeah,
had that. I know
yeah.
other people that have had it.
The one where they'll say, I only work one day a week. Don't you?
Well, my wife says that to me. So
Yeah.
In Johnny's case, it's probably true.
I think that is the myth, isn't it? That if you work in the wedding industry, it's dead easy. You work one day a week and you make
Just
loads of
pressing
money.
buttons, aren't you?
I mean, it's easy. Click.
So a lot of buttons to
let's-
press, though,
let's
when
get
you're
rid of that
editing.
Yeah, I have to press 3 buttons when I'm editing.
And do you have a question to leave for our next guest?
We don't know who it is yet.
Who is undisclosed.
A random wedding-related question.
That's why.
Well, we've got a couple in the pipeline.
Yeah.
haven't we?
Anyway, so you've got to ask an
could be-
industry
it's gonna be-
businessy sort.
Can
of
it be
question.
specific to them, even if I don't know what they do? Can it be like,
Can
what
be.
do you?
If it was good, industry business specific would be good. But I suppose
Don't
the last
ask a
one,
photography question.
the last one kind of
No,
wasn't.
no,
So,
But it's
But
going to be a
I mean,
wedding
like-
person.
Oh, yeah. Here you go. This is taking the easy way out. This one. Okay, so my question would be, what is your number one piece of business advice to anybody else who is wanting to make their way in the wedding industry?
in their field or across the board?
In general, however they choose to interpret that.
All right. Okay. Their number one piece of wedding business advice.
Yeah.
Not just marketing across the board of business as well.
Anything to do with business.
Cool. Thanks, Jonny Draper Photography. Thanks
mate.
for coming on.
Thank you
If anyone
for
wants
having
to
me.
look you up, Jonny Draper Photography. Simple as that.
That's my
Instagram.
Instagram is Jonny Draper Photography. Website jonnydraper.co.uk. That's about it.
Yeah.
Nice
And
and
just out of interest, as well, are you putting in any workshops where you're doing or not?
I've retired.
You retired
I've
from that
retired
sort
from
of thing.
workshops.
He doesn't know it yet. He might become one of our workshops in the future.
I'm happy to guest
Yeah.
on workshops, but
No photography training at the moment.
without sounding lazy about it, they were just getting to the point where they were really hard work because I felt like I needed to make the next one bigger and better than the previous one, and it was getting to a point where I'm like, I actually don't know where to go with it, and
But
so-
you've no qualms on coming in our workshop because
No.
we want to try and put something pretty special on where we cover the whole industry.
Oh yeah, I'd love to.
At some point.
Cool. Thanks, mate. Thanks for
Thank
coming
you,
on.
boys.
Thanks for coming on,
Thank
mate.
you.
We loved it. Usual stuff.
Shuffle papers. Anchorman. So thanks so much for listening. We really hope that you found this episode insightful, inspirational, and if you did enjoy that, then please consider subscribing to us wherever you get your podcasts, iTunes, Spotify. We're a Think Wedding Business.
We're also on YouTube and Instagram. So if you want to watch us, you can go over to YouTube and find us at Think Wedding Business. And the same over on Instagram to keep up with all of our future episodes.
We'd really love you to subscribe and join us on this journey. And if you do like this content, please consider giving us a 5-star review. It just helps us get seen and helps spread the word.
So thanks again for listening,
Wings
and we'll see you
out.
next time.
Bye-bye.